listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey Kay, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
Welcome to High Tech with Corey K, where we cover all things technical, including PCs, Macs, laptops, desktops, home theaters, MP3 players, smartphones, tablets, dot matrix printers, you name it. If it has a computer in it or on it, we may be covering it. Ask any and all questions through email at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at hightech with CK, that's HITECH with CK, or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me off the air, I will answer you in real life and then answer your question for the benefit of everyone else on the following week's broadcast. Last week, we mentioned that we will be covering processors, media players, and torrents. During our Power User segment, we will be covering Minecraft development with Python. What's that, you say? Python? I thought Minecraft was written in Java. Never fear, Python developers. You too can write your own Minecraft mods without having to learn a new language. But first, we're going to be holding our first High Tech with Corey K contest. The person to write me with the best idea on how to make the X-Zone Tech Zone forums easier for listeners to use and respond to at www.xzonetechzone.com will win a $50 Amazon.com gift certificate. We want to make it as easy as possible for everyone in the X-Zone Nation to ask their technical questions, and we want to hear your ideas on how to make that process easier. So email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com or send me a Skype message at hightech with CK, that's HITECH with CK. Our first topic of the day is processors, or CPUs, or even processors, RAR. When you go out to buy a new computer, you see phrases like i3, i5, and i7, and you may be tempted to think that all i3, 5, or 7 processors are the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are going to discuss on today's show the differences between processors with similar names. As always, we're also going to be covering tech news of the week. We are also going to cover the seedy underworld of torrents, what they are, what the benefits of using them can be, and some of the potential drawbacks. We will also be discussing popular media players such as the Roku, Kodi, Sony Media Player, and Apple TV. We will discuss the major differences between some of these popular players and what to look for when purchasing a media player. Before we get into that, we want to discuss an important development in quantum computing. China this week launched its first ever quantum satellite. It's a so-called hack-proof satellite, which is a bit of a misnomer, as we will see in weeks and years to come. But they launched that satellite in the Gobi Desert, and they used a program called QUESS, Quantum Experiments at Space Scale. According to the International Business Times, the satellite, nicknamed Messius after a Chinese philosopher, was launched, and this marks a big transition in China's role from a follower in classic information technology development to one of the leading figures. Now, in quantum communication, according to the IBT, a quantum photon cannot be separated or duplicated, thus making it impossible to intercept or crack the information it carries, so we're led to believe. What's really scary about this development is if a quantum satellite exists with superior encryption, it also has superior encryption breaking technologies, so it will have an advantage in reading the previously considered the secure communication from other satellites. That's something that is not being talked about openly just yet, but keep your eyes on this new development. Now, according to the IBT, Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Boston University, Alexander Sergenko, reportedly called the launch very exciting, and it carries global importance, and it's the first experiment of its kind. Quantum computers are a leap forward in technology. They're so advanced that the major OEMs would be afraid at this time to release them. Normally, when a processor advances, the OEMs want to release it incrementally in little pieces here and there. There are processors many tens of thousands of times, if not millions of times more powerful than the processors, even the most expensive processors that are available for us to purchase today. They've already been produced in the lab, but they're not quite market ready. The companies that make these computers, they need to add in a little planned obsolescence. If they release something too great too soon, they may obsolesce their older equipment too early. The timing's a little tricky, but keep your eye on this. Quantum satellites launch from China. It is a huge new development. We need to pause for a break. X-Zone Nation, this is High Tech with Corey K. We'll join you on the other side of the break.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome back to High Tech with Corey K. Email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at hightechwithck. That's HITECH with CK. Or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. We want to take a moment to discuss processors. When you go to buy a new computer, you may have heard statements like an i3 processor is the best or i7 processors are the best. So you go online to pick out a new computer, find the cheapest computer with an i7 processor, and you think you're getting exactly the same processor as a much more expensive computer that also uses an i7 processor. We are here to smash that notion on High Tech with Corey K. The truth is, there are many kinds of i3, i5, and i7 processor, among others. Each kind boasts that it can support different amounts of memory, different clock speeds, but most importantly, different features. If you are in a company that requires the use of legacy Windows XP applications, you may need a processor that supports Windows 7 with XP mode. If you have seen one i7 processor advertised that says it supports XP mode, you may be tempted to think that all i7 processors support XP mode. This is not the case. Only certain varieties of i7 processors support Windows 7 and XP mode. So when you're deciding which processor to buy for your computer, pay attention to the specific sub-variety of processor. If you're a gamer and see an i7 875K processor, this processor will enable overclocking for all of your high-end graphically intensive games. If you see something like an i7 2600 on the other hand, you are using what is known as a Sandy Bridge processor. This type of processor is impressive, but supports only up to 4 DDR3 DIMMs, or dual inline memory modules, which is a type of RAM for your computer. Always remember that ROM is roughly equivalent to your long-term storage. There are BIOS ROM chips on your system, but more likely when you're talking about long-term storage, you're talking about the hard drive on your computer, which can now be 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, 4 terabytes or more, as we discussed on the last episode. And just remember that RAM, on the other hand, is your short-term memory for your computer, which can greatly impact the speed of your computer. So if you have a computer with 4 gigabytes of RAM and you upgrade it to 8 gigabytes of RAM, your computer is going to run a lot faster than before. Now, if you see something on the other hand like an i7 6700 processor, that's a newer Skylake i7 processor which can support a staggering 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM instead. That's that specific variant. If you look at other variants of the i7 Skylake processor, you may be able to support even more RAM or have a different feature set. So pay attention to that. You may notice letters after the different types of i7 or other processor. A K at the end of the model on these Intel processors, such as an i7-6700K, means that the processor can support overclocking, or overclocking's enabled right out of the gate. Overclocking is running the processor at peak times at a speed that is higher than normally recommended for the processor. Using overclocking can potentially void your warranty, but gamers and architects and others will notice a nice speed and performance enhancement when using graphically intensive games or other applications. Overclocking can potentially damage your processor and wear it out faster. In the past, it could also mean that your processor could literally explode if the limits were tested too much. But thermal sensors in most modern computers can shut the system off before this calamity happens. A T at the end of an Intel i-series processor means that it is power optimized for longer battery life, among other things. An HQ means that the processor is ready for your graphics intensive applications like AutoCAD and SolidWorks. If you need to run applications in XP mode still, you can go with something like an i7-975 that has support for XP mode. XP mode is necessary for organizations on a budget that need to run legacy applications, but support has officially ended for Windows XP mode in Windows 7. At some point, you would think a move to newer applications will be needed, but then again, as previously reported on High Tech with Corey K., it was recently discovered that some government agencies are still running floppy drives and dot matrix printers. And as we are starting to see, progress is not always without its problems. Some newer computers running Skylake processors have witnessed problems with out-of-the-box compatibility with things like NVMe solid-state drives and various kinds of encryption like McAfee encryption. Fortunately, firmware updates on solid-state drives have eliminated many of these issues on newer systems. Sometimes you may even need to do a BIOS update on your computer, which in a future show we will discuss the dark art of flashing your BIOS. Now, if you're building a custom computer or just looking to save a few bucks on a pre-made computer, there are many cheaper AMD processors out there that do the same thing as an equivalent Intel processor. Just to give the listeners a little bit of background, back when the two companies were younger, Intel and AMD signed an agreement back in 1976 or so, which allowed AMD to copy Intel's designs and vice versa, pin for pin, all the way up till 1995. Back then, Intel and AMD, even in their previous incarnations, were just two among many fish in the processor market, but they gradually clawed their way to the top. Now, back in 1995, realizing that they were now the two big dogs left in the processor market, a lawsuit ended the practice of exact copying between Intel and AMD. So in the past, you could swap an Intel or an AMD processor in the same machine in many cases. But after 1995, things became different. Intel went with the so-called land grid array processor and socket, and AMD went with the pin grid array socket. What this meant is that Intel and AMD sockets were no longer cross-compatible with each other. So when you're buying a computer now, you have to pick an Intel processor or an AMD processor most of the time. There's a few exceptions, but it's very few and far between. Even when possessing the same or similar features, many AMD processors represent a significant cost savings over their Intel rivals. You may even find that several AMD processors support XP mode or overclocking even more so than an Intel processor, but Intel may have specific features that you may need, like Intel Rapid Storage technology for software RAID, and that may be something that your organization requires or that you personally require. Now, many AMD processors are enabled with AMD-V, that's V as in virtualization, and can support Windows XP mode, overclocking, and other features that you'll find in Intel rivals. Feel free to email me at CoreyK@PCTechFL.com, message me on Skype at HighTechWithCK, or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. You've been listening to High Tech with Corey K, where we've been informing you to beware when purchasing a new computer. Not all processors are created alike, even if they have similar sounding names. We'll rejoin you on the other side of the break, where we crack open the seedy world of online torrents. We're going to discuss the pros, the cons, the dangers, the benefits, all on the other side of the break. Further on down the show, we're going to be talking about Minecraft with Python in our Power User segment. And as always, we're going to be covering the tech news of the week. Stay tuned to High Tech with Corey K. Don't go away. We'll see you soon. And just for the record, we are not going to be talking about Pokemon Go this week. I happened to find a new Pokemon to add to my Pokédex in the break room this week, which was very exciting. But at the same time, I think we've talked that one to death, and it is so yesterday's news. In today's episode, we've been talking about many different kinds of AMD and Intel processors. There are so many different kinds that I would not even think about buying a new computer without consulting arc.intel.com or amd.com to get an up-to-date, complete listing of all the features of any AMD or Intel processor that you're thinking about buying or their subvariants. You can also email me specific questions at CoreyK@PCTechFL.com, and I will be happy to answer your questions. I am really interested in hearing your experiences with Skylake processors. There have been so many user reports of various issues that Intel has even changed the wording on their site to call them products formerly known as Skylake. So maybe Skylake's getting a bad rap, but there are also a lot of solutions out there. Several seemingly insurmountable problems may actually be solvable, and we will solve them together. The biggest issue with Skylake processors, which we haven't even really discussed yet, is the fact that Skylake is going to be one of the first processors to not be backwards compatible with earlier versions of Windows. Even mainstays like Windows 7 will not be supported after a specific date. I'm very hesitant to mention that specific date because the user outcry has been so great that Intel may end up pushing back that final date from where it is now. There was an interesting controversy early on in the life of Skylake where they revealed that Windows 95, 98, really old legacy versions of Windows couldn't be supported on Skylake without major software engineering intervention, because the older versions of Windows had a 9 in them, and newer versions of Windows do not have that 9. So that alone contributed to a lot of development time. It takes a lot of work actually to make modern equipment backwards compatible with older equipment in many cases. So that was a huge controversy. It still is. I don't think we've seen the end of the user backlash on this issue, and we'll be discussing that and many other topics when we rejoin on the other side of the break. Thank you for listening to High Tech with Corey K. Exo Nation. We'll be back real soon.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at www.drgibbswilliams.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Coming soon to the X-Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com, and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. GeneX provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold.
Welcome back to High Tech with Corey K. Email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at hightech that's HITECH with CK, or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. On the last segment, we covered processors. On this segment, we are going to cover the seedy world of torrenting. What is a torrent, you might ask? A torrent is really just a specialized file that contains a link to another file, usually a movie, game, ebook, music, or some other media file. Using a torrent file requires a client like BitTorrent or uTorrent, which you can download online and install on your home computer. The very word torrent strikes fear into the minds of the uninitiated, since it is often linked to downloading pirated, copyrighted material. But this is not always the case. You can go online, for instance, to www.archive.org and download a torrent file instead of directly downloading a PDF or MP3 file. Downloading torrents allow the user to more easily download multiple media files at once. As broadband connections grow ever more faster, you can do more and more simultaneous downloads. That is, if your computer, RAM, your network plan from your ISP, and your router allow it, among other things. Of course, you also have to worry about filling up your available hard drive space, especially if you download too many movies or other large video files. The files at archive.org, for the most part, are public domain files, so there's nothing particularly illegal about using them. In the past, ISPs tried to crack down on illegal downloads by banning or otherwise punishing users for using torrent clients like older versions of Napster or BitTorrent. Think carefully about what you download, because there can still be repercussions for downloading pirated material, as legions of citizens slapped with lawsuits, fines, and jails can attest, particularly in the early to mid-2000s. Is this why we call it the seedy world of torrenting? Not really. When you download a media file using a torrent, other users can also upload that same media content using a part of your bandwidth. Making this media file available for upload to other users is typically referred to as seeding. If no one seeded a torrent, then download speeds would be slow or non-existent if you wanted to acquire a new media file. In general, the more people seeding or sharing a media file downloaded via a torrent, and the greater their network upload speed, the faster that you can download a torrent file. There are other factors involved, but that is seeding a torrent in a nutshell. How do you find torrents? One way is to use a site that includes torrents for public domain legal files like www.archive.org. Another way is to use what is called a public torrent site. A public torrent site, unlike a private torrent site, is often unencrypted. They don't always scan content for malware, so downloading malware or a virus is always a possibility when using a public torrent site. They generally let anybody upload content without restrictions, and the link from your torrent file, which may contain your computer's IP address, which can be used to personally identify you. It can easily be discovered by authorities looking for people that are downloading illegal or questionable material. It is easier to get caught downloading illegal content if you use a public torrent site. An alternative is to instead use a private torrent site. Private torrent sites are often members-only sites that you can only gain entry into if you already know someone who is a member. Private sites often offer some form of encryption. You can configure your BitTorrent, uTorrent, or other torrent client to not allow uploads, but these private sites often require you to maintain a good upload-download ratio. Otherwise, you will need to pay into the website to be allowed to continue to use it. And if your upload-to-download ratio is bad, you could easily get banned from using the site. So turning off uploads will generally not work in your favor, and it will make downloads of specific media files slower overall for other users, if only by a microfraction. Remember that the more users sharing a file equals the faster the download speed. It takes hundreds and thousands sometimes of users sharing a file to really achieve a good download speed. Otherwise, you can expect to wait a while for your download to complete. Some private torrent users really go gung-ho and leave their computer or even a server with an installed uTorrent client on permanently. Some even use a specialized NAS or Network Attached Storage, that's NAS, device to make the content available to other users. Even though private torrent sites generally encrypt their information, there is still a link to you and to your computer's IP address, which is almost like your digital fingerprint. If a member of law enforcement were to gain access to that private torrent site, then your information could easily be gathered for legal purposes. For that reason, private torrent users will often use a proxy IP address through Tor, CyberGhost, or a variety of VPN hosts. A proxy IP address, by the way, is an IP address other than your own, often used to conceal your computer's true identity. When using a proxy address, users may experience problems using a torrent client. Some VPNs ban or otherwise discourage users from torrenting over the VPN. The price for the security of a VPN is often slower download speeds, but oftentimes it's worth it because your true identity is being concealed. You have somewhat of an insurance that either you are not going to be effectively tracked for downloading content, or you'll be tracked in such a way that it can't be used in a court of law, because with encrypted communication, it may not be obvious what you are downloading. But nothing is safe. If you downloaded the content and kept it on your computer and later that computer is seized, then you are legally liable and you could be facing who knows what. So be aware, there's no perfect security. Also, if you use a proxy from another location within your same country, you may find that your BitTorrent client no longer allows you to download via torrents. You'll try to use a torrent. It seems like it will be successful, but nothing will really happen. You may have to change the settings of your BitTorrent, uTorrent, or other torrent client to get around this problem. And there are many websites out there. If you do a little Google search, you'll find what those settings might be. Now, other times you can use a proxy IP address from another country to make it look like you're downloading content from that other country. Yet another way to download torrents is through IRC. IRC, or Internet Relay Chat, is an earlier version of instant messaging before IM became popular, before AIM, before Yahoo Instant Messenger, definitely before Facebook Messenger. Typically with IRC you are directly downloading media content, but some IRC channels allow you to download torrents instead. Unless you're using a VPN or Tor browser, something like that, downloading torrents via IRC often presents the same dangers as downloading through a public torrent site. Be cautious and wise when downloading torrents. There is no 100% safe way to download illegal material. Stick to the well-established sites like archive.org for downloading public domain content. Now, if you are a software developer, you can actually offer users the option to download your software via a torrent file. But be careful and do not download pirated material. Anyway, you've been listening to High Tech with Corey K. Email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at hightech with CK. That's HITECH with CK. Or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. On the other side of the commercial break, we'll be covering the world of programming Minecraft and modding Minecraft with Python instead of Java. That's pretty exciting for our power users. A quick word before that, though. We mentioned the Tor browser before. Some listeners may be wondering, what is the Tor browser? If you remember, a couple of years ago, a Harvard student was doing something shady online, and he thought he was covering his tracks by using something called the Tor browser. And because he was the only person in the area using the Tor browser at the time, the authorities were actually able to quickly identify and capture him, because only that one physical site in the vicinity was using Tor. So instead of it making him more secure, in that particular case, using Tor when nobody else was using it actually made him less secure, and he was caught pretty easily. The Tor browser opens a browser just like you would Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Google Chrome, but instead of using your computer's own IP address, you can configure it so it uses one of these proxy IP addresses instead. It can conceal your location, your IP address, and to that extent your identity. There are some holes, as we've discovered over time with Tor. It's possible to track at the very ends of your communication your actual IP address, so there's some weakness there. To get around that, some Tor users will, instead of just using a proxy to connect, they'll use something called a bridge, which requires some special configuration, and a bridge provides an encrypted tunnel of traffic, and that in combination with the proxy server in theory could be more secure. Like we've said many times though, there is no perfect security. Tor has actually been broken. It's not currently considered a reliable means of hiding your identity, so some users take an even further step and they'll use an OS like Tails Linux to conceal their identity, or at least their computer's identity, further. We'll cover that in a future episode of High Tech with Corey K. Thank you for listening, X-Zone Nation. Email those questions to me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. That's FL is in Florida. And we will join you on the other side of this break.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey K, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to High Tech with Corey K. Email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at High Tech with CK. That's HITECH with CK. Or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. Now that we have rushed through the world of torrenting online, we are moving on to our High Tech with Corey K Power Users segment. Back in 2009, a coworker told me about an exciting new game that was just in its beta stages called Minecraft. The game involved blocks and sheeps and zombies, and you could modify it or mod the game using Java. It all sounded pretty exciting. Lo and behold, I went home and downloaded the game. When I opened it up, much to my surprise, I found that it looked and acted almost as if it were an old-school 8-bit game, rather than the high-tech 3D, heavy CGI, newer games and first-person shooters that we were growing accustomed to. Being an Atari fan, an Atari 2600 fan in the early 80s, I was in complete heaven. Minecraft continued to take the world by storm and has now become one of the most popular video games of all time. It became so popular that Microsoft acquired the game in 2014. Hundreds of books have been written about playing and using Minecraft. The game is written in the Java programming language, and mods usually involve some sort of Java at base. But what if we didn't know any Java, but we were a power user that knew Python instead? Never fear, a new book has arrived on the scene called Learn to Program with Minecraft by Craig Richardson. It's really a wonderful book. The biggest surprise is that the author teaches you how to mod the game in Python instead of Java. Nearly all tech books are plagued by this phenomenon whereby the book becomes obsolete almost as soon as it is published. This book suffered the same fate. Between its release date late last year and now, Minecraft itself updated its core several times. The author put out updated files for a new version of Minecraft. As soon as he did that, however, Minecraft updated again. Never fear, there's a way to make this book work for you. If you download a legacy third-party Minecraft launcher such as T-Launcher, you can download Minecraft 1.9.4 and use the latest files from the book's website. Remember, when downloading these launchers, do not click on the ads. Wait 6 seconds, as many Minecraft modders have grown accustomed to. Wait for the ad to expire, and it will continue on to the site that presents the real download. For people that like the ease of use of Python, this book is a godsend that will allow you to learn or review programming fundamentals while modding your favorite game to great effect. The book uses a version of the Spigot Minecraft server. Make sure to allow your Windows or other firewall to allow that server port and the application through the firewall. Unlike too many Python books, the author uses Python 3, so it is not tied to what was even recently the ubiquitous but older and less secure Python 2. The book uses a specialized Python Minecraft module that allows you to edit the game using Python instead of Java, so this may accustom you to such hybrid technologies as Jython, or Java and Python mixed together. For those of you who like to chat while playing with others in Minecraft, you can use the mc.post-to-chat function to chat with your friends programmatically. This book offers the potential to attract many younger people to programming by teaching basic programming concepts in a fun environment. Intermediate to advanced programmers can skip over to later chapters in the book. A number of convenience objects like blocks, zombies, water, trees have been created for use to use. Newer programmers who might otherwise be intimidated by Java's more verbose style can ease into programming with Python instead. You even get introduced to elementary web app development with Flask in later chapters. The book, once again, is called Learn to Program with Minecraft by Craig Richardson. On to our tech news of the week. Web giant Gawker.com, recently sued for defamation by wrestling legend Hulk Hogan, has announced that they will be ceasing operations after 14 years. The cost of the lawsuit pretty much drove Gawker under, and they were forced to sell out for as close to the settlement amount as possible. Cisco this week admitted that its firewalls have been vulnerable to NSA backdoors for years. It's not a huge surprise, but it's just further confirmation of how tenuous our privacy in an online world really is. Twitter announced that it has terminated 235,000 Twitter accounts with ties to known terrorists. Microsoft's PowerShell, an enhanced command line utility that may be familiar to our power users, will soon be coming to Linux and Mac OS X. Microsoft surprised the world a few years ago when they announced that they had hired Linus Torvalds, the developer of Linux, and someone who was almost considered a defender against Microsoft, a developer of a new non-Windows way of life, or at least a revitalizer of an old non-Microsoft way of doing things. Was the last person that you would ever think would work at Microsoft. But after a few years of quiet, Microsoft slowly started to release certain details, and now in certain versions of Windows 10, you even have Linux for Windows, which is interesting. We're definitely going to be talking about that in a future show. AT&T and T-Mobile announced this week that they will be capping their data plans further and increasing the cost for many wireless data plans. So beware, wireless mobile users. The big telecoms, seeing that the smartphone market has become saturated for the most part, are starting to increase prices in response to that. Pokemon Go will soon be made available within smart glasses. Google themselves released Google Glasses a few years ago, but the operation busted because people were very concerned about their privacy out in the open. For some reason, they thought it would be easier for people with glasses to film them, even though people can film them now with smartphones and other devices, but it just seemed too weird for people, and there was almost a public revolt against it. I think that's died down a little bit. Companies are going to try smart glasses again, and Pokemon Go will be one of the apps available in some of these smart glasses. I knew we said that we wouldn't talk about Pokemon Go this week, but I just couldn't resist. That about wraps up this week's edition of High Tech with Corey K. Thank you for listening. Don't forget our contest to come up with the best user interface and platform for technical questions on the website for High Tech with Corey K. That website itself is going to unfold and develop over time. I want you, the users, to help shape what that will eventually be, and we want to make it as easy as possible for people to ask questions. The current website, xzonetechzone.com, it does require registration to use, and I'm afraid that has intimidated many potential users away from using that platform. Although for right now, you absolutely can register and ask your questions online. I will get to those questions as quickly as possible, and I'm going to cover those questions in future broadcasts so that other members of the X-Zone Nation can hear those answers. As always, email me at coreyk@pctechfl.com. Message me on Skype at hightech with CK. That's HITECH with CK. Or join the forums at www.xzonetechzone.com. We would like to hear from you. We would like you to help shape future topics on the show. So if you want to hear about anything at all technical, from home theater systems to printers, which we covered in a previous week's show, but we can always go back and elaborate on those topics, to good tech books that you have heard about, questions developing websites, questions about using computers and using the internet in general especially. We definitely want to hear those questions. Feel free to ask. There's a variety of ways to get in touch with us here. I was just thinking about this the other day, but Facebook itself is about to turn 10 years old. I just can't believe I've been on Facebook for about that long. It has really changed the way that people interact with each other. Friends and former classmates and former colleagues that I almost certainly would have lost touch with many years ago, I now stay in touch with or have reconnected with thanks to Facebook. So we'll be doing sort of a Facebook anniversary edition at some point in the near future here on High Tech with Corey K. Thank you so much for listening, Exo Nation. Until next time, keep on teching, and once again, that's Corey K at PCTechFL.com. Tech hard. We'll talk to you next time.